Welcome, Halle. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. It's great to be here. Thank you. I love a room of all women. This is amazing!
Okay, so it was mentioned in the intro, but I want to hear more about your little trip to Capitol Hill. You went last May.
Yes.
You stood right by the steps and you yelled out a statement, and I want to recreate it here for everyone.
I'm in menopause! I mean, how liberating is that? Like, that was so liberating to stand there in Capitol Hill and say that. And you should have seen all the men. They were like, what the? What? No, that's a secret. You don't say that, lady. So it was really great to go to.
I think it was actually, I'm in menopause, okay? Wasn't that what it was?
Well, exactly that.
Something like that, yes. So you were there,
Yes.
not just to raise awareness, but also to help unveil a proposal, which pretty incredible, has
Yes.
bipartisan backing,
Yes.
for $275 million to be set aside for research, training, all sorts of things like that. And you, again, we're joined by a bipartisan backing here, Senator Murray and Senator Murkowski, Democrat and a Republican. Can you talk a little bit about just how these conversations even started and how you were able to get bipartisan attention?
Well, when I realized that I was in menopause, and I realized what a dearth of information there was out there, that there was nothing, it was like a desert. And I realized that my own doctor didn't really understand what was happening with my menopausal body. I was 54 years old. I had probably been in perimenopause for maybe 10 years and nobody mentioned the word to me. I realized that the reason I didn't know is because doctors only have a chapter in medical school of education. Only 13% of doctors are NAM certified or understand the menopausal body. And I started to go, there's a problem here. And then I dug a little more and I found out, well, there's no money. The NIH doesn't fund menopause research. It goes to many other great, amazing issues, but menopause has been historically left out as if it's not a thing. But we know that it is a thing, right? Yes, we can fight for it. It's a huge thing in a woman's life, and no woman escapes it. So I realized the only thing I could do, use my power, and to go advocate for myself. And by doing so, I knew that I would be advocating for all of you and for all women, right? That's what we do when we stand up for ourselves. We stand up for others. So when I got there, I went first to Senator Murray. I knew she would be a friend of the court. She was a friend of a woman that works at my law firm. And I went into her and I told her my story of how I found out I was misdiagnosed with herpes, but it was really vaginal, dryness, vaginal atrophy. And I told her—
First time that's been said on the stage here, I think. So far, I don't know, yeah.
I had razor blades in my vagina after a great night of sex. And I went to the doctor and he told me, oh, this looks like the worst case of herpes I've ever seen. And I thought, well, hold it, what? He said, yeah, this is herpes. And then I realized, after I took the test, no, I did not have herpes. And when I dug a little digging, it was vaginal atrophy. So I told this story to Patty Murray, and she totally understood. And she said, I agree. This has been historically overlooked, this issue. I've gone through menopause, and you're right, we need to band together. And I said to her, and I know this will be a big election year, but I said, this is one issue that should not be politicized. This is a human rights issue. It affects every woman. That's half of our population. And if we live long enough, which is a privilege, we will all face these years. And we deserve more. We deserve health care. We deserve to have doctors and healthcare professionals treat us that understand what's happening to us. Not tell us we have herpes when we don't, or we have Sjogren's disease when we have dry mouth, or misdiagnose us, or just really not know what to say or to tell us, right? So she said, I agree. So I enlisted her help. She wrote the bill for $265 million, and she said, the only way we get money for menopause is to do our own standalone bill. Otherwise, we will continue to be overlooked. And she and I then joined arms, and I said to her, I have a goal to get every female senator on both sides to back this bill and let that be a loud statement to our government and to Congress that we really mean business, that we really are demanding as women dollars so that we can live our best lives in midlife. And right now, out of the 25, I have 18 senators There's still a few I have to get over the line.
Okay.
But I will not stop.
So I want to get to Respin, to your company, but just real quick before we dive into that, you are out there spreading the word on menopause, not just in Congress. I heard that you spoke to Mike Tyson about it recently in the green room at the Jimmy Kimmel show. I just want to know what that conversation
How that started? Mike understands.
Does he?
I mean, I've known Mike for a while, and when I saw him at the show, I hadn't seen him in a while, and he was sitting there with his wife, and so right away when I said hi to Mike, I saw his wife, and she said to me, "Oh my God, talk about this menopause." And I was like, "Are you there?" And she was like, "Not yet, but I want you to help me." And then Mike right away jumped in, and he said, "Oh, please tell me it's not gonna mess with my sex life." I said, "Well, Mike, I'm sorry to tell you, if your wife doesn't know what I know, it possibly could affect your sex life. So let's talk about it." And we launched into a 20-minute conversation. And by the time it was done, Mike was telling me and telling everybody that walked in the room that he knows all about vaginal atrophy and that he is not going to let this happen to his wife, and that he is going to support her, and he is going to, understand her mood swings. He's going to understand when she floods the kitchen, when she forgets why she walked in a room. He was really going to be really supportive. So
who knew that Mike Tyson would be our advocate for the menopause?
Oh yeah.
But we will take it.
And he also understood how it affects men too. Mm-hmm. We're laughing about Mike caring about his sex life, but he really understood that it's really an issue. It's a human rights issue. It affects all of us because every man knows a woman, loves a woman, has a mother, has a daughter, has a female coworker, right? So men are affected just as much as we are.
Okay, tell us about Respin. What is it? What can you tell us? And I know there's a bit of a relaunch happening,
yes.
And some of it is TBD, but what can you share?
Well, the original brand Respin, the idea I had, it was just a very broad health platform. And the idea was respinning everything you thought you knew. And I wasn't really quite sure what I was doing with it, but I knew that I had an idea and that the idea was germinating. And when COVID hit, I sort of launched it out there because, well, during COVID, what else was there to do but try to put out a business at home, right? Duh. So after the COVID years, and when I found out that I was in perimenopause, it occurred to me one day, what topic deserves a respin? Mm-hmm. Menopause deserves the biggest respin of all, right? Rethinking everything you thought you knew. So then when I got singularly focused and decided that Respin would be a brand that deals with women sort of at the perimenopause stage, that's their entry point, but that we would hold their hands throughout menopause, postmenopause, and through the rest of their life, through midlife until hopefully the end. That's what it is. It's a female longevity brand where we have community, we have technology, it's science-backed, doctor-backed, and we realize that while, that study of, years ago really was probably the single most important study that I think derailed us as women, that turned us all against HRT. Mm-hmm. I think HRT isn't the answer for everybody, right? There's still women who are afraid, and it'll be a long time, I think, before we really change the way we as women think about HRT, right? That stigma is sort of stuck with us. So I know that we need more than HRT, and I think what we need is community. We need a place to talk about what we're going through so we don't feel alone. And we just did a sort of MVP program at Respin, and 2/3 of the women had improvement because they just were talking with their health coaches and understanding what was happening to their bodies. And this time of our life, we lean out of our health care instead of leaning in. But when you can talk about it with other people, kind of like Weight Watchers, you now are accountable to yourself and you have a support system, right? And it's actually working.
I'm going to go to you guys for questions in a second, but I'm curious for a show of hands. Who in the room here had their doctor, whether it's your gynecologist or your general practitioner, talk to you about perimenopause or menopause without being asked? Okay.
But the doctor's female.
Okay. That's actually more than I was expecting. Is that surprising to you?
No.
It was a minority. It wasn't I don't think it was the majority for sure, but.
No, but I would question how much they know. They might bring it up because if they're a woman, they know it's happening. Maybe it's happened to them. Most doctors have heard about menopause. It is one chapter in medical school. So they have heard about it, but do they know all they should know about it is the question.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's where the gap is.
Okay.
That's where the gap is.
Questions for Halle? Please raise your hand if you would like to ask a question, or you can also just air some grievances if that's, feels right to you. We've got one over here.
This is a great subject. So what is your recommendation on good sources to get information? Because actually doctors aren't that good.
Well, I would ask you to come to Respin. And what we are going to do is we want to gift everyone in the room here today like a special access to be able to come to Respin and sort of try it out and be a part of our launch. I really want you to do that. But we have doctors, we have seminars, we have scientists, some of the leading scientists in the space that are talking about, what hot flashes do to our brain and why it's not just a hot flash. Because what I've learned along my path of midlife is that every time a woman has a hot flash, it's almost like having a little mini stroke. Like there's these nodules that become apparent on our brain. And when you look at a brain that's in Alzheimer's, this is what the brain starts to look like when a woman has hot flash after hot flash. And Dr. Mackey, who's one of the leading scientists out of Chicago, has this study that she's been doing, and she has a device that she's devised, and she puts it on a woman, and we can find out exactly how many hot flashes she's having. So you might not even know you're having hot flashes, because while we were there with the First Lady visiting her, she had a subject that was being monitored, and this woman thought she had 5 hot flashes. She really had 50 hot flashes. She didn't feel 45 of them. But that hot flash is still doing what it's doing to her brain, right? So I think it's really important that we understand how to stop ourselves from having hot flashes. And HRT isn't for everybody, so there has to be some other therapies, some other answers, which is why we need money for more clinical studies and more research.
We have a question back here, and then we'll come to you.
I love your ambition to get such bipartisan support.
Vicki, can you introduce yourself also?
Oh, sure. I'm Vicki Medbeck from the Kellogg School at Northwestern. I love your ambition of getting such bipartisan support. You mentioned there are 7 senators who are not yet on the bill. I'm just curious if you might want to share their names. Because what this room has is political power.
Do you know somebody who knows somebody?
I think we all probably are voting.
Well, you can talk to me after.
Okay. Come find
It's
Halle.
not my goal to call out other ladies, but there are still 7 that are
Need some working on.
And I will say this. It's not because they don't believe that this is an important topic, but the more conservative members of our government just feel like we should not spend any more money. They don't want new appropriations. They think there's enough money already in the pot that should be moved around and we should get our due. But we know that menopause never gets its due because it never rises to the level of needing money, because nobody really has ever acknowledged that it's a real serious moment in our life. Right? So that's really what it's about. It's not that they don't believe that it's worthy, they just don't want to spend the money, new appropriations.
Got it. Question over here, and then we'll come to you.
Hi, Halle. Betsy Madani Herman.
But Senator Ernst. Get her!
I'm a healthcare executive. I'm the global head of research at Philips. If you are relaunching it as a consumer health or specifically to individuals, but you were looking at expand beyond that, what are some of the barriers and partnerships in the entire ecosystem of healthcare you're seeing, aside from the political side, that you wish you could tear down?
Some of the barriers you're asking. Well, I think it's about getting people to understand that this is a real issue and sort of join forces with us. And one of our issues has been, we're venture backed, but when I was out trying to raise money, it was really hard. I went, to Silicon Valley and I was trying to raise money, and it was really hard to get people, largely men, at some of these big, venture capital companies to believe that, like I just said, that menopause was a real thing and that menopause deserved a company that was built in the framework of what our company is, that was, while it's very holistic in nature, right? It was very hard for them to see the there, is the way I put it, for the reason for this company to be. So that was probably one of my biggest barriers, was getting really people to believe that this was a worthwhile venture, especially with what our approach was.
So it's still at such a basic level. It's awareness, urgency.
Yes,
all these.
and it's community-based, and it was really hard to get people to understand, well, how do you sell community? How do I make money with that? Too many people are thinking about how do they monetize it. And I really was coming from a place of, but how do we as women just get the help we need? It's not about selling them product after product. That's not what our company is about. So that was a barrier to get people to understand, well then, how do you scale it? And how do we make money if we give you money? Right? And I had to really make them understand that this is a really good business model if you think of Weight Watchers, and you think of this the same way, but it's Weight Watchers for menopause. There is a model there. Community really does sell. And after a time, once you get your community together, they're going to need things to support their journey. And then if we provide them products in a very thoughtful way that's born out of what they're asking for, then you have a business that's viable. It's serving a community, and it's also a viable business at the same time.
Sheeta?
Hi, Sheeta Bina from Insigniam. I'm going to do a quick share and then a question.
Okay.
I went through my hot flash period right when Viagra was being advertised everywhere.
Oh my God.
Around. And I'd have to explain that to my young kids. So I decided that in any meeting I was in where I had a hot flash, I made a point of everyone knowing about it. Because if I could hear about how they couldn't get it up, they could hear about how hot I was.
Yeah.
At the beginning, they were a little uncomfortable, and I considered it like a one-woman crusade to educate them.
And to that point, if men went through this problem would have been solved a long time ago. Long time ago.
One thing I would want to know how you are planning on handling, or if you're cognizant of, for years, decades, centuries, the reason why women weren't given positions of power was people who were afraid we'd be having our periods and we'd be moody and we'd make decisions, bad decisions. So when you just said about the hot flashes actually affecting the brain, how are you planning on contextualizing that so there isn't a backlash around women can't now be trusted when they're going through menopause because it makes them crazy?
Well,
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do. And this is exactly what we have to destigmatize it. That's a big myth that just because we're having a hot flash or we get a little forgetful that we can't run a company and that we can't make brilliant decisions. We still do all the things. But that's the reason we need this kind of education, so that women can start taking this time of their lives into their own hands, and they can figure out the therapies that they need to minimize those hot flashes, minimize that brain fog, minimize the raging, because that's just how we get, right? So we have to start figuring out how we treat ourselves, how we can be treated, so we go through that time of life in a more seamless way. Right? So that's the story. That's why we need.
We have to make the point that we can manage ourselves.
Oh, we always have.
Just because we have that happening doesn't mean we're not going to make the right decisions.
Certainly.
Right?
And we know that as women.
And
we
I
know
think
we
that's
can.
part of the campaign.
Yes.
Is awareness, and don't you go using that against me.
Right.
Because I can manage myself very well, thank you.
Exactly.
So that there isn't a back.
Yes.
Now there's, scientific reason to say our brains don't function well. Do you understand?
Yes, I do understand. But at the same time, men can't actually, purport that their brain functions well all the time either. First of all, I know some men that do some real dumb shit. And I don't need to say the names of the men.
We all
Well,
We all know. So I do think that's part of the, destigmatizing what menopause is. As women, it's that Fred Astaire and Ginger Roger thing. She goes backwards in heels. We can do all of that, and we always have, right? We've raised our children. We've been working mothers, and we have done it all. And as women, we're able to do that. We're able to multitask in ways that I'm sorry that men just aren't. They're not built that way. We're built differently. That's what makes men, and women, in my opinion.
Halle, we are so appreciative of you coming here and speaking to all of us, elevating this subject, and going out there, going all in on menopause in the halls of Congress with Mike Tyson, with whoever will listen. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.